Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is OSU Football Update.
Hi, everyone. We're talking Cowboy football with one of our favorites, former OSU quarterback Clint Chelf, as the Cowboys get set to head to Oregon, taking on the 7th-ranked, 6th-ranked Ducks now, I believe, in at least one poll. Tall task. Clint, great to see you. You look like you're doing well. Looks like you haven't been chased out of the pocket lately. How are you?
Yeah, thankfully, the only people chasing me are about 3 foot tall, but they get after me pretty good still. No, I'm doing well. I'm happy to be on. It's good to have football season back. You know, it gets pretty dry there for me in the dog days of camp, and so I'm excited to just have something on TV to watch.
This is timely to have you on. I appreciate you doing this, especially on short notice. But with the quarterback battle, I seem to remember that you went through your share of that during your time in Stillwater. But the quarterback battle, and then Hauss, Hejny's named the starter. Hauss comes out and looks unbelievably good, not just running the ball, but a couple of throws. And then he gets hurt at the end of the first quarter. Let's start here before we get to the whole what's Zane Flores going to look like in Eugene. Your thoughts on Hauss Hejny and his start. I know he's not going to be available for a while, but what do you think of what you saw the other night?
Yeah, I was really, really impressed. Obviously, we knew what his legs could do, right? You know, that was kind of the big storyline. Was he was the runner, Zane was more of the thrower. But you know, one of the first completions he had, maybe the first completion he had, rolling out to his left, a strike down the field. That's a really, really tough throw for anybody, and especially for a guy who's known more as a runner. So I was really excited. I think he brings a lot of excitement to the team, and I also think, you know, as we've seen in the past few years, adding that element of a quarterback with the legs that he has really opens things up. So. You know, obviously, super unfortunate. You can't control injuries, but I was really impressed with what I saw, you know, in those 2 drives.
What he was able to do, and then how it took a little while for Zane Flores to get his footing. From up in the booth, for what we could see, it really wasn't as much on Zane as it maybe was a couple of things. One of them. And I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but, you know, you always want somebody, if you're a quarterback, you want somebody to have your back, right? I mean, you always appreciated that. But it looked like there might have been some miscommunication on the offensive line a few times. I mean, Austin Kowecki talked about that after the game. But also, you know, some of the backs maybe looked a little tentative. I thought Sesi Valahi ran harder than any of the other guys. How much, from your experience, how much do you need your offensive line to be on the same page and your backs to be running hard? I mean, that's like a lifeblood of an offense, isn't it?
Well, it's the lifeblood, and it really takes a lot of pressure off. And you're thinking about a guy, and people kind of forget this, and I didn't because I've been through it. But within the last few days, weeks, Zane had been told, hey, you're the backup. And the emotional toll that takes, I'll never forget the day that they called me in and told me that I wasn't going to be the starter. And it took weeks for me to get my opportunity. You know, he was going through that range of emotions in a few days. And then you have to think about, you know, once you make that decision as an offensive staff, and I know, you know, you try to treat the quarterbacks the same, but there's certain plays you're going to have in for Hauss that Zane's probably not going to run, and vice versa. And so the game plan was built largely around Hauss. You know, you want to give the guy that you chose to be the starter the most opportunities of success, and you're going to do that with a game plan and scheme. And so I think it starts there. You know, that people forget about that this is a kid who just got told he was going to be backup, and then he thrust into the spotlight almost immediately. And then the other side, you know, you mentioned it, the offensive line and the running backs. You know, it starts up front with those guys, and you know, I felt like some of those holes were a little bit more open just because of Hauss's legs, and I don't think the defense really had to respect Zane, even though I think he is a capable runner, and I think that's something we'll see in the coming weeks. But you know, when you rush the ball, Coach Gundy talks about it a lot. You know, you want to get a certain amount of yards per carry, and that first game it was some tough sledding. But like you, I thought Sesi ran hard. I liked the way Caleb Hicks looked. I know he got the bulk of the carries. But ultimately, it's going to come down to, as we saw last year with a guy like Ollie Gordon, the offensive line opening up those holes for those guys.
Okay, you have said this more than once with your experience when you played. Was not that you wanted to get blown up by a defender, but you couldn't wait for the first hit once you got in the game because it seemed to get you really going. Now you're in a situation where if you're Zane Flores, yeah, you probably feel the same way, but you can't afford it to be a big hit because of the lack of depth now with Hejny on the sidelines. From that standpoint, and Mike Gundy said this Monday, he said, we're not going up there to play scared because I think a lot of us are like, no, that's going to shrink the game plan. But it doesn't really shrink the game plan if you're going to go try to win the game, does it?
No, I mean, I think you have to ultimately, you owe it to the rest of the guys, as a coaching staff, to the other players, the other coaches, to go out and try to win the game and do whatever it takes, and that can mean running Zane. And I think you have to look at it that way. Injuries are obviously, as we just found out, super unpredictable. And so I think you owe it to the guys to put the best foot forward and go out there. I did. I was one of those guys. I liked getting hit early. I liked a quarterback draw or a pull read, just so I could kind of settle into the game. Once you get hit, it feels like you've really like taken a shot and you're ready to go, and it's you settled down a little bit. So I don't know how Zane feels about that. Maybe he just doesn't want to be touched. I have no idea. But it always helps settle me in and knowing, hey, I got hit. Now I'm fine. Let's just go play football.
Did you ever call one of those type of plays early in the game on your own just to get it out of the way?
No, not really. I would just, because those first 10, 15 plays are always scripted. So everybody knows what looks we're probably going to get, what plays we want to run into them. But I would, in their ear, hey, if we could get one of those plays early on the script, that way I know it's coming. I can get ready for it, get me hit early. That way I can settle in. But no, unless it was just they came out with a look that we weren't expecting at all, I'd check out of it. But for the most part, I tried to stick to the scripting pretty well because those are the plays that you've really looked up what they do and got a good plan, and so you feel like very confident that everybody knows exactly what they're going to do with those 10 or 15 plays.
Well, plus you're a rule follower, so I mean you couldn't go right.
Yeah. I was a bit of a rule follower. I feel like I never tried to, unless I had a really good reason to check out of a play, I left the play calling up as much as I could to the guys that were getting paid to do it.
All right, I want to go back to something you said because I thought it was really interesting, the psychological side of this and preparing. And you went through the similar situation to what Zane was going through before that opening game. So when you got in that first time, after you'd been told you were not going to be the starter, how long did it take you to get to it? Was it the similar situation of like first time you got hit, or or was it easier than maybe you thought it was going to be able to focus like that?
I actually think I got a little bit better of a situation, so to speak. So the first time I really went in after that was on the road against Kansas State, who was number 2 or 3. We were already down. It didn't feel like there was a ton of pressure. The very first play, we threw crosser over the middle. I mean, it was just, it happened so fast. I didn't have any time to think about it. Whereas Zane's got this whole week leading up. He's the guy. He's preparing. I was just kind of thrust in to a hostile environment, much like he's going to face. So it took just a play or two for me because we were losing, so we had to get in, and I had to get in and really just go to work immediately because we were already behind the other team.
It was those bright orange helmets and orange pants, if I remember right, with white jerseys.
That's right. Yeah, we were rocking it up there, and it was a competitive game. Colin Klein, they had a really good team. But I didn't have the time to get nervous or think about it because, Wes Lund had just got a concussion. He was on the sideline. I didn't know if I was going in. They told me tell me to warm up. I got about 4 throws on the sideline and went in, and we just called the game plan, that we had worked on. There was no, hey, let's run it 3 times and punt. It was, hey, let's get in and throw it down the field. So I didn't have time to think about it. I did get hit, and it settled me down for sure. But, it would have been, I think, a different story if I had time to prepare the whole week, and think about it. But some things happen when you don't think as an athlete, and I think sometimes it's for the better.
Well, now Zane Flores gets to think about going to Oregon all week. And well, I'll ask you, Clint, in a moment about going into, because Manhattan was one thing on a Saturday night. Now you're going to Eugene, which has historically a very good home field advantage. I'll ask you about that in a moment, but first, let's hear from our sponsor, the good people at Brahms.
Satisfy your sweet tooth with a Brahms old-fashioned banana split. Crafted with a delicious banana, split down the middle and filled with not one, but 3 scoops of Brahms premium ice cream flavors. To complete this masterpiece, all your favorite toppings are poured on each scoop to bring it all together in a perfect harmony of flavor. Treat yourself to an old-fashioned banana split at Brahms, where every spoonful leaves you wanting more.
Okay, Clint Chelf is our guest as we talk OSU football. The Cowboys at Oregon Saturday afternoon, 2:30. By the way, you can see the game from CBS Sports on News on 6 in Tulsa, also News 9 in Oklahoma City. We're thrilled to have that game because we don't get a bunch of them anymore in Big 12 country. They're all over the place, but they're not necessarily on CBS. Okay, you talked about your experience in Manhattan that night, and yeah, the game was where it was at that point. It was pretty competitive, but it wasn't like you had all week to think about it, like you just said. Now Zane Flores has had one game, his first college game, his first pass attempts, all of that out of the way. But he knows he's the guy. And while he's been with the team in some hostile road environments, this is the first time he's the guy. And you go to a place like Autzen Stadium, which should be really loud. What are the challenges once you know you're the guy, and then add on top of that, knowing you're going into a place like this?
Well, there's challenges going in as a team, I think. Obviously, Zane, probably in the back of his mind, at least I was this way. You never really know. You always think you can compete at this level, but when you get an opportunity like going to Oregon or like playing in Manhattan, you never know until you do it, really. I thought I could compete because I was confident in myself as an athlete, but in the back of your mind, it's like, hey, I've got to go out and play well. The other thing that I think is different for Zane that I think could be a real positive, and it's obviously something that you never want an injury to happen, but for Zane, not having anybody behind him to look over his shoulder, and I'm not trying to disrespect the other guys, but it was kind of a 2-horse race. I think we know that Hauss, there's no opportunity for Hauss to come back for the next few weeks. So I think that is going to allow him to play a little bit more free. I think that was my biggest concern when I was playing is, hey, if I throw a bad ball, throw an interception, make a wrong read, am I going to get taken out? Is JW going to get put in? Is Wes, when he gets healthy, is he going to get put in? And I don't think Zane is going to really have to deal with that as much. I think he's going to have a pretty long leash. And so that's a real big positive going into a tough environment like this. I think he can go out and play free, and I think that's going to really help him to settle into who he is as a player. Obviously, we talked about the game plan week 1 being predominantly something for Hauss, so another full week of a game plan and plays that he's extremely comfortable with. And then as a quarterback, you always hope. We talked about it earlier. Hope that run game translates a little bit, right? You can help a young quarterback out quite a bit by being able to hand it off and get 4 or 5 yards of carry and stay ahead of those chains. And don't ask him on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 to have to throw the ball down the field. So I think mentally for him, these kids seem way more mature and in a much better spot than I was at this point in my career. So I think mentally he'll be good, and I think all those things will add up to being positive, not having to worry about, hey, if I make a wrong read, am I going to get taken out, and just play free and play with confidence.
Okay, let me ask you this too, because until you've seen a lot of game action and say you were going up against a team with a ferocious defensive line, and Oregon's going to be really good up front. I think we saw it a little bit, really not a big sample size, but there may have been a couple of times when Zane left the pocket early. I mean, are those the things that as you're watching a game Saturday that you're looking for, is how comfortable will he be when the pocket starts to collapse, when you need to stay in there a little more time to give your guys a chance to get open? I mean, is that kind of the first thing you're looking at when you see how comfortable is he really?
Absolutely, yeah, especially with a young quarterback. I think the tendency for guys that are athletic and young is anytime they get pressured, they want to try to bail out, get outside and run, use their athleticism. Because in high school, for the most part, if you get out and you're more athletic than your competition, you're gonna able to run around. You can kind of make a throw on the run or get some yards. But with a young quarterback, if there's pressure, how well does he step up? If he stays in the pocket like you mentioned, that will show me that he's really ready, not just for this game, but he's mature and he understands what he needs to do. Because like I mentioned, when you're a young guy and you're used to high school and you can just bail out. Well, at this level, those defensive ends are typically better athletes than us. Maybe not, a select few, but where that pressure comes from and how he handles it, if he's able to step up. Another thing that I've always looked forward to, not forward to, is looked for with a young guy is throwing the ball away. I think that's a big sign of maturity in a quarterback and understanding down and distance and understanding on the road what you need to do to win. If he's comfortable stepping up or throwing the ball away, I think he'll be ready for the moment. And those are plays that I think the crowd really doesn't like. Oklahoma State fans won't like, but it'll show some maturity and understanding of what you need to do to get a win on the road.
I know some of the background noise. People might think I'm near a rock quarry or something, but it's I'm just taking care of things that need to be taken care of on today. In terms of this, you guys, when you played, I can't remember what the largest point spread underdog you might have been. Maybe you do. I don't, but this one's 28, and I don't know where it is at the moment that you and I are recording this, but it's been a 4-touchdown difference here. When it's that big, or when you were a significant underdog, how much did you use that as any sort of motivation, or did you pay attention to it at all?
I didn't. That was back before, gambling and lines were really, mainstream and you could look at them. I just found out recently that I think we were, and this may have been the biggest dog that I ever was, against Baylor, in at home. I think we were 8 or 9 point dogs. I had no idea. I just assumed we were favored. I didn't know. But so with these guys, I think it's hard to not be aware of it. Back then I had no idea, and I viewed every game that we played in as if we were going to go out and win. And being a 28 point underdog at Oklahoma State, I think is really good fuel for these guys. I think they'll have to be aware of it. It's just more mainstream now. Everybody knows, gambling and the lines and everything's right in your face. I think they can really use that as an advantage. You come to Oklahoma State to win. We have a long, culture and history under Coach Gundy of winning games. And, I think that's something that they can lean on, because when you go on the road, it's your group and that's it. And it's a good team building exercise. It's good for camaraderie. And you get the opportunity to play. And I think this leads into Zane playing better, with no pressure. I think those guys understand that. Zane's not going to be looking over his shoulder. This team, there's nothing to look over their shoulder either. If you're a 28 point dog, you just go and let it all hang out and try to put your best foot forward. And I think if you use that as motivation, there's some guys on this team I think that can really make some plays and make some noise.
All right, 2 more, and we'll wrap it up. The first one is just your initial impression. Todd Grantham's brought what looks like a complicated scheme defensively. You got to have guys who understand what happens when A doesn't work and you need to do B or C, that sort of thing. What did you think of the defense? Do you like the more what it looks like hair on fire approach to get after?
I do. I was thinking back about those Knowles teams, and on third down, I remember thinking I would hate to play against this defense. They had all the guys mugged up. There's different coverages. Safeties were rolling. They were blitzing, and I thought that this defense, especially on third down, reminded me a little bit of some of those qualities. I was really impressed with the blitz packages they had, but also I think something that I watched last year, and I think has really improved, is the defensive linemen being gap sound and in their pass rushing lanes, staying in those and fighting to stay in those. There was times last year, and in this league with all these rushing quarterbacks that every team has nowadays, it seems like if you make a bad pass rush lane, quarterbacks take advantage of that. And I thought they were really disciplined in their approach. I thought the defense really really did a good job of playing with fire, playing with an edge. But I really liked what I saw out of the defensive line and the linebackers.
So you touched on this a little bit, but I'll ask you again. If you had 2 or 3 keys for pulling off what would be, according to the experts, a massive upset Saturday, what do those have to be?
Well, I think two big ones, one on each of the side of the ball for me is the offensive line. We know this Oregon defensive line is going to be really good. You've got a young quarterback behind you, carrying the ball 30 plus times, letting these running backs, Sessi, all these guys. I don't know if Rodney Fields is going to play or not, but Hicks, all these guys, we have a good amount of running backs that can run the ball and give you different looks and different things to prepare for. But that starts with the offensive line. I think they have to do a good job of opening up rushing lanes and taking some pressure off the quarterback and also eating up some of the clock, right? You know, Oregon, as we know, is a team that likes to score a lot of points. And, you know, if you can kind of play keep away from them, I think that allows your defense on the other side of the ball, my other key, to stay fresh and continue to blitz. I think that is an ultimate kind of way to equal out two teams. If you think, you know, you're the underdog, is to blitz them, to force them into to make some decisions at quarterback that could be turnover worthy, and then you got to capitalize on that. So I think, you know, continue to heating them up on defense, and then the run game on offense.
Clint, I really appreciate the time and your insight. This is unique stuff, man. A lot of people would not think about some of the things that you brought up. And for those, I mean, listen, OSU fans will remember you very fondly, but there are some, as we get older, there are some who may not know who you are. So let me just give them a hint as to part of your game. Just look at the Texas Tech tape, and I'll tell you right now, you ran like a gazelle.
I like that. I couldn't do it anymore. I can promise you that. I can barely get away from two kids. They tackle me pretty easily. So,
listen, very few of us can. So, thanks, Clint, for your time. We're looking forward to it. It's OSU at Oregon, 2:30 on Saturday. Our thanks to our sponsor, Brahms, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio stream. Stay with News on 6 online and on television anytime for the latest news, weather, and sports.